and the 38 countries on the rim of the Indian Ocean are home to nearly 1/3 of humanity. When we add the 35 countries on the rim of the Asia-Pacific, then the entire Indo-Pacific region is home to 60% of the world's population. As a maritime nation, India sits astride busy sea lines of communication which transit across the Indian Ocean, over which nearly 120,000 ships transit every year, carrying 66% of the world's oil, 50% of the world's container traffic, and 33% of the world's cargo traffic. Nearly 1 billion tons of oil transits through the Indian Ocean every year, and these oil arteries and trade routes lead further east to the ASEAN and countries like Japan, South Korea, and China. Approximately $5 trillion worth of commercial shipping and energy supplies transit through the South China Sea every year. The aspect related to the movement of oil and trade through the Indo-Pacific region is an area which is of great interest. The other issues will be that the Indian Ocean region has also emerged as the global economic highways. What we have to look into is the threats and challenges which emanate in the waters of the Indo-Pacific region, range from asymmetric as well as non-traditional threats, such as piracy, maritime terrorism, human trafficking, drug smuggling, arms trafficking, and poaching. Another challenge on the waters of the Indo-Pacific region is that indiscriminate pollution of the oceans have resulted in a detrimental impact of climate change on the oceans. And this has resulted in the Indo-Pacific region being virtually in the eye of the storm. And our navies and coast guards have to be ready to take on this challenge as well. The instabilities and the turbulence in some parts of the Indo-Pacific region has the potential to spill over into the maritime domain, and the situation can best be described as fragile. Consequently, over 120 warships from nearly 20 navies are always present in the Indian Ocean region to safeguard their maritime interests. The issues in the South China Sea range from the territorial claims, claims of sovereignty, freedom of navigation, and control of resources. India has advocated adherence to international law and promotion and maintenance of peace and stability, maritime security and stability, and freedom of navigation and overflight rights in the region. An aspect related to international law, which is a cause for concern, is that the high seas, which cover nearly 50% of the Earth's surface, is one of the least protected areas on the planet. There is not a single internationally binding treaty for legislation in areas beyond national jurisdiction. This lack of legislation was addressed at the UN General Assembly in 2004, and an ad hoc informal working group constituted to look into this issue. The working group has had series of meetings over the years and has drafted an internationally legally binding instrument which has been submitted to the UN General Assembly in July 2017. At this point, therefore, it can best be considered as work in progress. The waters of the Indo-Pacific region have emerged as global economic highways. Another unique feature of the Indian Ocean is that 80% of the oil and trade that emanates in the Indian Ocean region is extra-regional in nature. This implies that if there is any impediment to the free flow of oil or trade, it would have a detrimental impact not just on the economies of the region, but the global economies as well. Safety, security, and stability on the waters of the Indo-Pacific region is of paramount importance, and it is the collective responsibility of the navies to ensure the security of the global commons. Networking among navies and maritime partnerships between countries of the Indo-Pacific region therefore need to be strengthened in the coming years. During the conference, we will take stock of the recommendations made last year at the Blue Economy Conference. Our analysis indicates that while we have an ocean of opportunities to harness the blue economy, the challenge is to ensure that these would be greenfield infrastructure projects with minimum impact in the environment and to ensure sustainable development of the oceans. We need to have a national level maritime policy for economic development of our maritime interests and implementation of the Blue Economy initiatives. The National Maritime Foundation has published a paper giving the policy recommendations for implementation of the Blue Economy initiatives at various levels of the government and to Niti Aayog. With regard to challenges and opportunities in the Indo-Pacific region, these will be discussed under 4 basic themes. The first being maritime trade, its growth and vulnerabilities. Nearly 95% of India's trade by volume and 72% by value transit by sea, and this accounts for nearly 30% of the country's GDP. We have vast maritime interests and also the aspect that the Indo-Pacific region is one of the largest trading regions in the world, with 36.6% of global exports and 36.1% of global imports taking place in the region. As far as maritime infrastructure is concerned, the government has launched an ambitious Sagarmala project, which is a port-led development initiative based on 4 pillars of port modernization, connectivity, port-led industrialization, and coastal community development. 80% of China's oil and nearly 90% of Japan and South Korea's oil transits through the Indian Ocean, and the interests of the countries of the Indo-Pacific region are linked to unfettered flow of oil and trade. The vulnerabilities to maritime trade and the mitigation options to the countries of region will also be discussed during this session. The second theme will focus on the regional arrangements which are there for connectivity, and these include the Belt Road Initiative, the North-South Transit Corridor, the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, Project MOSM, and the Sagar concept, which is security and growth for all in the region. The theme also encompasses examining the existing maritime structures, such as the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, Western Pacific Naval Symposium, cooperation with the ASEAN, and the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. The Indo-Pacific has emerged as a contiguous maritime space, and we need to examine the connectivity models as well as the options of the existing maritime constructs to enhance maritime cooperation across the Indo-Pacific region. The third theme will look into digitization of maritime space and information security across the Indo-Pacific region. While enhancement of the information exchange networks between navies will strengthen and provide greater transparency in our waters and enhance the maritime domain awareness, on the other hand, increased digitization in maritime space, leading to port operations and control of shipping out at high seas, brings with it the challenge of cyber malware, which is already impacting the maritime domain. The fourth theme will highlight the role of maritime industry, both public and private, in holistic maritime and security development. India has a vibrant shipbuilding and a warship building industry, which has played a critical role in the transition of the Indian Navy from a buyer's navy to a builder's navy. This is one of the finest examples of the Make in India initiative, and during this session, we will examine options for joint venture partnerships in the maritime industry across the Indo-Pacific region. In recent years, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, there have been a series of initiatives for development in the maritime domain. The Honorable Prime Minister has linked the blue chakra or the blue wheel on our national flag with our potential to harness the blue economy, and also outlined his vision for the Indian Ocean as Sagar, which means the ocean, and the acronym stands for security and growth for all in the region. These initiatives, along with the transition from the Look East to the Act East policy, are pointers to indicate that India has once again turned towards the seas and is destined to emerge as a resurgent maritime nation. In conclusion, I would like to highlight 4 focus areas which are likely to emerge as major takeaways from this conference. The United Nations document, Transforming Our World 2030 Agenda, and the Sustainable Development Goal SDG 14 provide a template for conservation of the oceans, seas, and resources. We now need to have a national level maritime policy for harnessing the blue economy and sustainable development and growth in different aspects of the maritime sector. We also need to have an apex level organization to coordinate and integrate the planning processes of different agencies in the maritime domain to implement the blue economy initiatives. In order to fully implement the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Sagar, we need to have a detailed maritime security and cooperation roadmap with countries of the region so as to shape a favorable and positive maritime environment across the Indo-Pacific region. The Indo-Pacific has emerged as a contiguous maritime space with common opportunities and challenges, and there is a requirement for greater cooperation across the regional commons. I would like to recommend greater institutional interaction between the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium and the Western Pacific Naval Symposium to identify areas of common concerns and provide synergy for greater cooperation across the Indo-Pacific region. The oceans are common heritage of mankind, and we need to provide greater security, stability, and freedom of navigation across the global commons. The current international efforts towards strengthening ocean governance, as well as legislation of the areas beyond national jurisdiction, need to be actively supported. Finally, the seas around us are gaining newfound importance as each day goes by, and I have no doubt that the current century is the century of the seas. I would like to take this opportunity to once again welcome all our distinguished guests for the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue. I'm sure that the enriching deliberations will provide some paradigm-shifting ideas and thoughts to enhance maritime cooperation and provide greater security, stability, and economic growth across the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you. Jai Hind.